Hi everyone, we see each other again. Welcome to the last talk for the Applied Games track today, Designing for Impact, How to Research to Kill Assumptions and Avoid Failure by Ellis Bartholomeus. Uh, I'm really looking forward to this talk. Research and design thinking is something that inspires me in my work, and really looking forward to the talk today. Um, a shout out to all our sponsors. Presenting sponsor Unreal Engine, gold sponsors NPL, AWS Glance, and Jungi. Legacy silver sponsors Gamation, Lakshya, and Yes No. Bronze sponsors Quali and Gameon. Hyper casual track sponsors Sunday. IP Connect sponsors Succeed Innovation Fund. I need to practice that a little more. um, Before I introduce my speaker today, a quick reminder, there's the discuss panel where you can talk amongst yourselves, maybe appreciate something that you like in the talk, share comments. That's the space where you can explore. Q&A space is specifically for questions, so please post your questions there. If you post your questions in discuss, they might get lost, so do remember to post your questions in the Q&A. And please do ask questions, because we really want to know what you're thinking, what is it that you like about the talk, or that engaging in that conversation is what we're looking forward to. So please do post questions in the Q&A. And one more quick notification, there is a feedback form which you will see in the handout section. So please fill in the feedback form at any point in the talk, midway, at the end, but please do fill it in. That's really helpful for us. So, okay, without further ado, I am going to introduce our speaker for today with a smile on my face, and you'll see why, because that's the energy she carries. Our speaker for today is Ellis Bartholomeus. She is the founder of Alice in Wonderland. Curious to know how that space is. So, something about Alice. Alice has been intrigued with the value of play. She graduated from the Design Academy in 1996 as a product designer and realized that to have audiences own a message, they need to interact with it. And since then, she has been designing play as a method or a tool to amplify self motivated learning and to enable rich social interaction. She's also co developed more than 50 games and playful interactive products on a wide spectrum of topics. An example of her work is she created a tool to help kidney malfunction patients adapt their lifestyle and cope with the disease. Another example of her work is a puzzle platform for the elderly to stay cognitively fit by becoming more familiar with technology and the internet. After years of working on all these amazing products, she wrote a book called Apply Play, which is a book on the art of play. And she gives talks and facilitates workshops on the value and power of play and how to make a change while designing and driving intrinsic motivation. And her work has clearly impacted groups around the world. So, without any more delay, excited to call Ellis on on the virtual stage. I am going to quickly send her a message.
Hello.
Yes.
Nice
So,
to meet you.
nice to meet you. So we're live, and I'm going to hand over the session to you. I'm going to disappear now, and it's all yours. See you soon.
Thank you very much. Well, welcome to all of you. I wish I was there in Hyderabad. I have been at IGDC twice in Hyderabad, and I really loved being there. But of course, we all know the circumstances are different. So therefore, I am online giving this talk about designing for games. And oh no, wait, I should share my slides. Still not used to this. You would think that we would become used to doing this, but I'm sharing my slides now. So welcome, I am Alice in Wonderland. You can always contact me at alice@aliceinwonderland.nl with any question you have. And I do want to encourage you to start writing your questions down in the chat about my talk. Any questions you have about game design or any topic I am raising, please ask me, because I love to interact. And actually, I don't like to talk that much as I'm doing now, and I don't see you, but I would like to have an interaction with you. What I think is most important in games is we are interacting with our audience, or our game is interacting with our players. So that's why I love to hear questions. So please be encouraged to and engaged or challenged to ask me questions. So I'm Alice in Wonderland, but before that, I also was a company developing games. Now I'm more into consulting and research with games. But before that, 10 years, I developed about 50 games with Leica.nl. And it was actually in 1999 that we were developing a website for a children website about citizenship, global citizenship. And they asked us, can you develop a game that will engage our audience, the children in the age of 8-12, more with our content we deliver on the website? So then we decided to create a game with the content. And that was our first serious game we developed. And since then, we developed games for WWF, for elderly, puzzling, to learn about, to prevent being alone, but also learn how to use a computer at that time. So 1999 is really a long time ago, but also about government issues to communicate with citizens and urban situations, and many, many different games. And the last 5 years, I've also been involved with the Internet of Elephants. And actually, Gautam Shah is also giving a talk about game design. Maybe he actually just was before me, I realize now, that he also talked about Internet of Elephants. And I got involved with Gautam Shah via our education. We were here in Amsterdam, classmates, and he was talking about how to preserve wildlife. And we started talking about what we can do with game design. And Safari Central is one of the first games developed, but it is how can we make people play and make them aware about the difficulties that wildlife is facing, not only elephants, but wildlife in general. So we developed a game that actually it's not a really game, but it's more a digital toy to make an audience interact with animals and not invite them to come and see them in the safari, but have them in the pocket. Have them in the phone. They had an augmented reality app to take a photo, a selfie with wildlife. And via that fun activity, we were trying to engage them with the dangers that these animals are facing. So Internet of Elephants has built, I think in 5 years' time, over 7 different concepts in which they try to make people interact with the content. So they use game elements to make people learn more, play around, but also have impact while they are playing. So Enter the Wilderverse was actually launched just before the most corona lockdowns 2 years ago. And it was actually launched to make people play outdoors and go on research using augmented reality and find out where is the animal, searching for poo details. And then the lockdown hit the launch of this game, but they managed to make it work inside the house. So people could indoors play safari and go search for the gorilla inside the game. And it's really beautiful. They made so many games, but they did also so much research in these 6 years of developing how can we engage people with wildlife preservation and how can we cooperate with the right kind of people. So recently they launched this publication, The Rise of a Wildlife Gamer, to find out who is our target audience and what can we learn about it. And there is this can be found easily if you type in the title or Internet of Elephants, you can find this report. But very briefly, I want to show some of the numbers they showed and how they wanted to document this report, because I think it's so interesting to see how they approach. And I have been part of most of the projects, but just I'm playing a role, but just a small role. So they and we had this adventure of developing these tools and prototypes to test what can we learn from our audience and how can we learn from their motivation. So in the report, they had very many research topics discussed, and also research and find out, so who are we dealing with? And that's so interesting, I think, in developing games and finding out how to do research in your design process. So, for instance, they found out that their target audience has a great variety, and sometimes they want to aim at a certain target audience, but sometimes maybe at another. But it's also for all the projects that you try to develop for having an impact, you have to find out for who are we developing it, and how do we find out where to reach out to them, how to find them. And I think Internet of Elephants is such an interesting project because they are always aiming at the world, which is quite difficult. I work mostly in Holland with Dutch users. So then you have a very limited, small area of people, but you're always thinking like, what if this concept or this startup or this app can go abroad? But then that's a different way of thinking that you use in your user research and in your design research. So for me, developing designs is always a matter of thinking of you're running an estafette, because there's always a point like who's responsible for what? When is the developer? When is the artist? When is the publisher? Or when is even the investor holding the cards in hand for the next decision to make? And I think that's so interesting. And I have now 25 years experience of developing digital products, but also non-digital, but mostly digital. And I noticed that actually the key point there is like, when is who responsible and who wants to let go of the stick? Because sometimes someone has a good idea and he never will let go of the stick. So then the other guy starts running, and he can maybe run faster because he has investment money, for instance, and he can make it go much faster. But the one with the idea might not let go of the stick. And that's so interesting that I noticed so much for great ideas failing for not finding the good ownership or not finding good implementation plans. Or when we talk about health projects, then we have very good projects, but then we cannot find the good how do you say that, the network to make it reach the right audience. So that's what I think is very interesting, and we have to do research a lot to find out, which I will dive into soon. Because what I also learned is that game design, and especially serious game design or applied game design or games as tools, is still like children play. We are learning this since 1999. The complete industry is almost that old or that young to start developing games and to find out what works and what doesn't work. Meanwhile, the entertainment games are all, evenly finding out how difficult it is, what does work, what doesn't work, and how can we make a successful game is not an easy trick. And it's really about being efficient and finding out who's the owner of the process and the product and who's taking it to the next level. So what we use for that is, this is I think a global famous character, but I'm not sure. In Holland, he's called Bob de Bouwer. In England, he's called Bob the Builder. And he's fixing everything. He's so clever. He can solve every problem. He's on TV, but he's also a toy character. But I like to think of him as a hero, that he can fix everything. And that's what we are trying to do as designers. We're trying to fix problems, find solutions, and build solutions. And for that, we need tools, like design thinking tools. I'm using those a lot, and I'm learning a lot about how to use them. Plus game thinking tools. And then I want to refer and give everyone the tip to Google for Amy Jo Kim. She has great talks online about game thinking. And that's very much about finding your audience, finding your ambassadors, finding your how to delight your customers. And she has great tips on doing research, how to find them, and how to kill your assumptions. That's something I want to dive into in this time as well. So this is just an abstract visual. It's about how to design a product or a concept, an experience, a campaign, service, or product service system. And a game is, of course, included in a product. So we have a dot on the horizon. The black line is the horizon. It's the future. And it's a vague dot. We have no description what it is in detail. So, but there is a dream. What do we aim for or hope to achieve? And we are standing here in front, and we see the horizon far away, and the here and now is our questioning, what shall we do and how do we get there on that dot, the vague dot on the horizon? Well, me as a designer, I say it's a matter of making choices. And how do we do that? Well, for instance, now I'm just making that product or the game, I'm just making it a square block, just to tell the story of how to design and research. We have this block, this is our idea. We have this block and we want to know what to do with it next to make it go where we are aiming for and what we hope to achieve. So we might need to have one assumption, our product needs a certain color. So then we do research and we diverge. We choose all the possible colors which we think can fit. And then we design our test to find out which color shall we choose to make our concept become better. And then you can, of course, think of what if we do all Pantone colors or all available colors. That will be hard. So you always have a little bit of a background of an idea, like it should go this way or this way. Let's test. And then in the test, you also design how many colors shall we choose to test. After you did your test, you evaluate and you document your test results and make a choice. You converge with arguments and reasoning based on the test that you have done. You wanted to learn this and you found out this, so now we decide this. Next, assumption 2, our product needs a certain size or proportions. So then you converge again, you make several options and you choose and you design your test again to find out what is the perfect size, and then again you evaluate and you document your test results and make a choice. What is very important that every time you do a test, you learn something more, and next test you learn something more again on how to test, but you can always look back and reconsider an earlier test and an earlier decision if you document it correctly and you find out and you learn, you become wiser and wiser in testing and making assumptions. So the more the merrier. That means the more assumptions tested, the better your design is and the better your outcome is. So how many assumptions did you manage to kill or redefine in your design process? So each test and every option and every made choice helps you make a more solid and strong end result. Plus, these learnings will bring you further in your next project. So don't forget that you become more experienced in doing tests, experienced in defining assumptions, experienced in killing assumptions and redefining your assumptions to do a test. So this path is actually the double diamond is a famous term that you're converging and diverging all the time to make decisions, and you'll use this as a compass towards your end result. But you always have great documentation of why is it what you build. And if anyone questions you like, why didn't you think of this? You will have reasons because you can tell them this happened in this way and this happened in this way. So what is great about killing your assumptions is you can prove your concept or your end result, or maybe as your end result just halfway the real end result. You can prove it for being relevant, for being desirable, for being viable, and for being feasible. And these are very important, criteria for making any product and also the process being valuable to proceed and to continue and to find out who's the next owner to take over the stick with the with the estafette race, and how to be efficient and more lean and fast and overcome your failures. So again, test your assumptions, because actually you need to kill your assumptions. You have to find out where are your assumptions, because very often you overlook your assumptions because they are assumptions and you think that they are true, but very often you have to really consider, is it true? Is this a fact? Or are we just thinking it is like that? And then it can become a fact or a valid argument for the next decision, and your insights will grow and grow, and your concept and your design and your development will be stronger and stronger all the time. What I noticed with this process in most game development projects is that game developers always are afraid of testing. They postpone the test in the end, and then they figure out that there were many things they discovered that they could have found out much earlier, but they just thought, like, if we do a bit more, then it will be more clearer to the user why this is like that. But it's not true. Test early. So again, to design a relevant, desirable, viable, and feasible product or concept, experience, campaign, service, or product service system, it is a matter of making choices based on test results. Sometimes you can just take a leap and take a guess. Some designers are able to do that, but mostly you need to find test results to also convince the people around you, convince your investors, convince your problem owners or your users even. So, and then you have a reasoning based on test results. And you have, it helps you as a compass to go what direction to go next, what to do next, what shall we do tomorrow with our concept, and what shall we do first. So what I like about being a designer after so many years is that I learned that we actually, as designer, we train to be able to zoom in and zoom out. We zoom out, like on the left you see the eagle, the bird's eye perspective. It has a very big overview and can see a lot of things at the same time. As designers, and in using design thinking and the tools, we are able to look at the ethics of design, at the consequences, long-term consequences, but also look at what stakeholders are we overlooking and forgetting in our process. We need to integrate them in our research as well, because they might be stopping our race, our estafette race, when it becomes really relevant for implementation, for instance. And on the other hand, designers are very good at detailed view, like the frog on the right. That's the frog vision. Frog perspective is from very detailed, very close by, and looking into the details. And both of these perspectives, I think we designers have the capability to zoom in and zoom out at the right moment in our design process to find out what do we need now. And that's also makes our job so interesting. So creativity is a phenomenon whereby something somehow new and somehow valuable is formed. The created item may be intangible, such as an idea or a theory or a musical or a joke, or a physical object, such as an invention, a printed literary work, or a painting, or an app, of course, or website, or a game. So, and what is scary in this whole process, you feel lost, you feel like you're wasting your time, you're insecure, you have an urge to start all over and not proceed. You lack confidence, and it's all scary, and that's also part of the design process. But that's why learning how to test makes you more competent and happy, I'm sure. So this is the double diamond again. It's being used in many design thinking tools and innovation projects. They say it's as simple as that. It's just the double diamond. You discover, you define, you develop, and you deliver. But I think you discover, you research, you define, you research, you deliver, you develop, and you research, and you deliver. And it's actually much more. I'm going to skip this video. Oops, sorry. You can see that later. So yeah, actually this one, it's actually the double diamond is repeated in your design process to come to an end result. And most designs are sort of like permanent beta. They are always not completely done, which is interesting, but that I also want to encourage everyone to test as fast as possible. So testing your assumptions, this is the interesting part, is how can you do that? I'm going to skip this slide. So because you have to fail fast, fail cheap, fail early, and go out to fail. Follow the innovation F word is called like that. But actually, the innovation in Holland, I mean, it's for 25 years very popular to innovate and to invest in innovation. And I think innovation is just what we have been doing also last 50 years, last 100 years, 150 years. We are always improving our products, our processes, and our daily life is being improved all the time. So that's called innovation. But I think we have the innate desire to make things more efficient because we are lazy and we want to earn more with less effort. So in that perspective, there are many products that we want to have in our lives and learn how to work better. So for design, we have an important role to fail fast, fail cheap, fail early, and go out to fail. And for me, in game design, I'm teaching students, I'm working with teams and many different game development teams. And I always tell them, create a simple striped down prototype to test your value proposition first, or even part of your value proposition. And find out what are your key assumptions to test these. And how can you find out, how can you prioritize? And then this is all to help your concept to level up and mature or get changed on the path to a feasible, relevant, and desirable product. I'm using many words in more multiple ways, but you'll find out that these are valuable to remember when you are in a certain situation of feeling despair. Think of this and it will help you. So you create a test card. First is a hypothesis. We believe that, ... Second, we test. To verify that, we will ... Third is the metric, and we will measure ... And the fourth is the result, the criteria. We are right if. So I have one example. We believe that Pac-Man is fun to play with 4 players, not only one. To verify that, we will use a makey-makey with fruits, and we measure the sound players make during play. We are right if players report enjoying it. So this is just a simple test, but it's showing you, I did this in Somalia, but I did this in many other countries, just to test also team collaboration and use it as ice-breaking to talk about how games can be used for a serious topic. And so the makey-makey is this technology, and you can put fruit in, and then each player is using one button. So one player is the up, one player is down, one player is left, and one player is right. And in that perspective, it's not easy to play Pac-Man because you have to tell each other where to go, and you freak out. And you can see the smile on the faces. Sorry, you can see the smile on the faces that this test result was very positive. Pac-Man is fun to play with 4 players. And this is just a simple test that I wanted to show how you can design your test and how you can get qualitative research. And always, so first, as a team, you have to find out what are our assumptions. Then you prioritize these. Then next, you design several tests to design. You think how can we test and how can we kill that assumption, and then you prioritize these tests because one might be less good than the other or less important. So you always discuss together. So what shall we test first? And the more the merrier again. So, for instance, how you can design your prototype and how test it. You can use role play, you can use a demo, a simulation, an even paper prototype, or just one screen design. You can test and already find out what people learn from your design or your prototype. Let me see. This is a paper prototype of Pac-Man created by schoolers to find out about the game mechanics in Pac-Man, because those are actually quite well done, but they also really wanted to test the whole user interface. and they have a great fun. I'm only going to show a little bit, because they were using their own hands as for the algorithms of the ghosts. Look at them play. I'm going to skip this again because we're running out of time. The mechanical Turk is also an ideal way of prototyping, because this is actually made in the 18th century or maybe even earlier. They said they made a robot that could play chess very well. So they built this machine, and it made sound, and this is a puppet, a wooden puppet that would move the stones, and you could be challenged by this computer, this fake robot or computer at that time, which didn't exist. And in real life, there was a person sitting inside, and with mirrors he could see where he how to move the chess pieces and to make sure he would win from the opponent. And then this is also a role-playing test. It's an app built in Brazil, designed in one afternoon by students from the university and teachers, professors, together finding a solution in Rio de Janeiro how to solve the traffic problem. And they built an app and they played out the whole concept, showing how it would work and what features it would have and why it would work so well to make people go carpool. And this is also a prototype film of cybersecurity, how you can play without doing any artificial intelligence or algorithms, how you can play out the game, but also find out the rules. During your play test, you will reinvent your rules in your game. I'm going to skip this video as well. Oh. And this is also a video of how you can use Pop, an app, to build paper prototypes in your phone and make it feel like an app. And you can really do a lot of tests and find out many assumptions. Then testing during Corona time. You can also fake test a lot of the communication in your game or in your app or tool using Facebook, WhatsApp, Zoom, Kahoot, or Miro, because you can build together without being together. And this was for many students a big issue of finding your user subjects during Corona, but you don't have to worry about it. It's possible. So, and what is also important in testing, you do not need to do all your tests with the target audience. Often many assumptions can be killed more easy with test subjects nearby, yet always include that in your documentation when you talk about what you tested and how you tested that. So most crucial is observe what people do and don't talk too much to your subjects when you have a test, but see what they say. And this is also one of the first tests we did for Internet of Elephants in a school class. Make your users talk together about the concept. That gives you many insights that you don't get if you only ask questions or do a questionnaire, because then you are always asking what you want to hear. But if you make them talk, you hear more things than you imagine. And it's better to listen and to get these insights from your users. So my tip is always test as much as possible. It can help you to decide either to stop your project, or to level up, or to proceed and level up next time with the learnings you gained. So this is actually my talk on doing research in developing your tools. And I'm very happy to hear questions.
Hi, Alice. That was wonderful. Thank you for sharing that talk. And I'll just jump into the questions before we lose any more time. There's some really interesting questions, so looking forward to this. Okay, the first question, which is actually has been sort of a personal dilemma for me as well. So, curious, What's your definition of fun, if I may ask? It's definitely difficult to measure, but what's your take on, this is fun because? So, like,
Yeah,
how do we?
a very good question. Compliments for the question for that person.
Yeah.
Uh, Ayush, thank you very much. Actually, when I started building games and I started doing research on applied game design, then the discussion was very much in academics about excluding fun out of the equation because it cannot be defined. So they were always discussing like, yeah, but when is a game good? A good game is good when it's fun to play, and but when is it fun to play? So actually, this has been a discussion worldwide a lot. Like, and then they said, well, let's call it enjoyment, let's call it engagement. I For me, actually, engagement is my priority, and I always tell people when you design a game, my clients always say like, I want my players to become happy, then they will learn what I want them to be learning about. So I want to make them happy. But I learned that actually we make games in games we design frustration, and if you overcome the frustration, that makes someone feel more competent, and that makes them also feel happy. So that's not the real fun factor, but that's the engagement factor, which is more important. But that also makes them happy. And when they connect with others, then it becomes a bit more fun when you see the smiles, and when they, how do you say, they, how do you say, when I show my enjoyment and my engagement to you, because I only see one photo now in my screen, so I'm showing it to someone else, then it becomes like a joint fun and a joint pleasurable moment. So it's actually a spectrum of fun. When is it internally, when is it externally? And I do think that the social connection and the relatedness is very important. Even if you're just playing with a game without other players, there's still some sort of feeling connected to something or someone, and it helps you be happy.
Right.
But then again, happy is not fun yet. So yeah, good question. I'm not sure if I definitely define fun.
I think what you shared was very insightful because the way we think of fun, the term fun itself, right? If we can kind of think of it in different ways, like have multiple, criterias, if you want to say, to kind of um, define that a little more. So, like engagement is a great way to look at it, right? Like I when I work with kids, and you're like, oh, are the kids having fun? There have been many instances when we test assumptions, and the kids might not be like all like, hey, wow, this is great. But you have to observe, like I think the point that you made, that when you observe that they are engrossed in that activity, they're engaged, that could
Yeah,
also be a scale for measuring fun. So yeah, I think
yeah.
something to think about.
Thank you. And that reminds me of one other thing is that I gave a workshop in Pune at a school with kids between the age of 9 to 14. And it was during a free day. It was Children's Day, a celebration day, and they came to build design a game for making their parents recycle waste more. And then there was a free lunch, a big lunch for them prepared. And the teachers and the parents who came along with the children said, come have lunch. And the children were all like, no, first I have to finish this detail. So they didn't come for lunch. And the teacher said, well, that's quite new. Normally they run out if there's lunch prepared. So I thought like that was a good measurement for engagement and fun,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, that's a great example. Okay, the next question is by by Vijay. I was going to say Alice because I read hi Alice. So hi Alice, how do you time box for when you have a lot of assumptions to kill, especially when so many stakeholders might be involved?
Yeah, good. Also, great question. Actually, it's important to communicate with your stakeholders what to prioritize, and ideally, involve all your stakeholders in that choice. Like, how do we time box our assumptions? How do we prioritize? What can we measure? What do we want to learn first to make the next step? And sometimes not all stakeholders can be involved in all the matters. So that's also what I think for the designers very important, is to find out how to co-create well and prevent not all stakeholders, like 10 people holding one stick for the estafette race at once and try to run, because then we're freezing each other. So I think that's the responsibility of the process owner and very much the designer to decide, how am I going to plan to prioritize the assumptions and the test with the stakeholders?
Right. Yeah. I think good leadership is key sometimes.
Yeah.
So the next question is connected to the previous one, so I'll just follow it up with this one. Some game companies, or big corporates, or they tend to ignore the iterative process of getting user insights or even making assumptions. They believe in expert opinions. So how does one change that kind of mindset where some people just believe that you don't even need to test assumptions? I know this. This is going to work, or I know from experience, and they ignore that part of the design thinking process.
Yeah.
So how do you change that mindset?
Yeah, that's not an easy part, because very often it takes more time to do tests, and they ask expert, and then the expert will say this, and then they follow that. Actually, in my 20 years of experience, very often yeah, it's funny. As an expert, I said sometimes I gave advice, and then I gave advice to tell them, like, test this first because I think this might happen. And then very often they said, we're going to do this anyway, the other way around, because I don't think you're right. And then later on they said, hey, how come, Alice, you were right at start? And then, yeah, I have the experience now of being asked in that role more often in an early stage. But it's hard, because I'm the one saying, like, but what if this happens? And it's the nasty message that no one wants to hear, because it's a little bit like I'm telling everyone that the stick of the estafette is still wet and we cannot run first. So then, and everyone is ready to run and go for the finish line. And so that is not an easy way to be attentive. But then again, if you learn more and more, you will learn that ignoring the iterative process is damaging more. And that is important to find out that it's very frustrating to develop a complete game which never gets launched, and that happens a lot. And very often it's simple mistakes and failures, and those are not the cheap and fast failures, but the slow and very expensive failures. So it's also a matter of making people aware, making people learn how important it is. And what we also learned very often, that developing all those games 10 years ago, we very often had to make sure that sometimes we had to tell our clients that they didn't know their clients, and we could show them from result and from testing, this is what your client needs and wants. And then they were like, oh, and which is a tough question or a tough remark to make to your client, that they don't know what they're doing in a way, but we find out in research. And also sometimes we have to try to make our client think that it's their idea that we came up with, and then they have ownership and they follow up on it. And that's also damaging for your own ego. But it is efficient, a lot more efficient in that way. So co-creation and making your stakeholders being part of the whole process and making them explain the whole process is very relevant.
Right. Yep. Okay, I'll move on to the next one. This is by couple. When designing tests, we might be emotionally invested in the assumptions and choose metrics that might be surface level or biased. How do you avoid that? Great question.
Great question and applause, because that is indeed our biggest bias happening. That for instance, when you interview a user, you will tell them what you want to hear. You will explain to them what you hope to hear, and you have to bite your tongue. And what might be good is to externally have the test performed by someone who's not you, which is also hard. But sometimes you really have to sit on your hands or bite your tongue to prevent your metrics to be biased. Um, Being that critical makes you already a good researcher, realizing that risk is there, and then try to design your test in a good way to avoid that problem.
Right.
And there's also a lot of how do you call that, online research done with A/B testing with advertising in Facebook and Google ads, because then you just put it in the air and you have these metrics to choose who's going to see your result. Those tests also help because you are not biased. But then again, what question do you ask, or what do you want to test, and be very critical about that.
Right. I think that's great. Yeah, that's a great insight again. And like you mentioned, co-creating, right? So maybe involve that co-creation and designing test as well. Maybe you might get different perspectives while you're designing the test. I don't know if that could also apply here. Um, there's another quick question. Okay, so just a heads up, we are at 8:45, but there are two very interesting questions. So this might spill into another 5 minutes just for the
Let's
audience.
do them.
Okay. Okay. So the next one is what is it that so this is by Ayush, and Ayush, feel free to clarify if I'm not in understanding this correctly. What is it that convinces you, or that this is something good enough to start with? I mean, how do we get the ball rolling? Since that's the most difficult decision to take.
Yeah. Well,
So I this is something good enough. It was at a point when you were sharing insights about testing assumptions and the test cards that you were explaining. I think that's the point when the question came in. Yeah.
yeah, good enough is very important to know, like the dot on the horizon. What are we aiming for? What do we hope to achieve? And does it match that? Which is very important. And it's very important if you are on your own making a decision, you can easily get the ball rolling. But then how do you get your audience? How do you get it published? How do you get developers? Because a game, hardly ever people build it on their own. They always need help. They always need a traffic. They need a medium to be exposed on. So you always need to co-create, and then it's very much a matter of how do we discuss together, how do we define together, with all stakeholders involved. And what I think is interesting on stakeholders is that very often people think that stakeholders are all those who put money in it or time or resources, but that's not true. Stakeholders are actually all those involved. And for with the children in Puny, the workshop we did over there at the school was involved, the mayor was involved, the press was involved, the parents got involved, the teachers were there, and all of them played a role in what shall we do to take it to the next level. That was just a one-day workshop. But very often you need to think like, who did we not think of that might be a stakeholder in this? And for instance, now with sustainability and the climate change, we should actually always, in every design we do, consider what would nature say.
Yeah. That's a great way of thinking about it. Yeah. Okay, I think this is the last question. How do you account for blind spots or unknowns in design? How would you conduct research to reduce them, if not eliminate them?
Yeah, great question. You all of you. Wait, I have to put one heart there.
That's
Great.
also fun. Yeah.
Really great questions. I'm very grateful already. so there is one design thinking tool which is perfect for that. You take a piece of paper or a big piece of paper, please, and you make it in 4 squares, and you make it the known knowns, the unknown knowns, the known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns. And you can do research online about this because it's very great. There are videos and explanations about this, how to go about making them. And it's great because you can find out like what do we not know, what we don't know yet. That's the hardest one because there's so much we don't know, but some things come towards the direction of your project, and those are your blind spots. But you also have your known unknowns, so these are your blind spots in the sense that you know with your car where it is, but you cannot see what is there. So it's a very good practice as a team to find out. So what are those? And then you can also use your testing of your assumptions to replace them. Something was something you didn't know, and you can move it after you did research on it. You can move it to your known knowns, and then you can still say it's not relevant, but at least we know. And that's it's the same thing for the unknown knowns. Is that you find out during this process of finding all these, you will find out, hey, we knew that, but we didn't describe it as a known, but we found out knowing that we didn't know that we knew it. So then you can put it in a known. So this box becomes bigger and bigger, and I love to think of doing research, and I'm happy to grow old knowing more and more. And also finding out that there's so much more I didn't know, but I'm finding out, and I love juggling that around. So that's a good way to eliminate them. But it's very difficult because you cannot start thinking of an unknown without a topic. You need a topic or a challenge to talk about what do we know, what don't we know, what might we know, what do we want to know. And then that also helps you finding out to prioritize your assumptions and then prioritize again what to test first to make the ball rolling. That
Right.
ties in all the questions.
Yeah, perfect ending. So yeah, I think that was great insight again. Like not to think of it as one box, but like adding those other boxes and then thinking of it as a process, maybe, and not like this is the problem, this is the solution, but think of it as a process. Maybe that's a great way of thinking of it. So yeah, Ayush, I think Ayush said we answered his question and we got that right, so that's great. I had no more questions, and we have spent a lot more time in our interaction, but we are not.
Oh, we did.
We do not regret it. So this is great, and thank you, Alice, once again for this wonderful interaction. The Q&A session was priceless for me. The presentation was just, just seeing the different ways of, when we think of play testing or testing assumptions. I feel like we don't really look at it can just be as simple as take out a sheet of paper, cut a hole in it, and that's your face, right? Like, I mean, some of the presentations that you showed with all the projects were really, really inspiring is what I would say. And thank you for being here. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank
And
you.
I would like to thank the audience. You all have been really great. This has been a great interaction, lovely questions. You all have made Alice very happy.
Yes.
And before you leave, please, handout section. In the handout section, you will see a feedback form. Please do leave in your feedback, so that helps us to kind of curate tracks that are well suited for you, and we know what your interests are, what your thoughts are. So please do fill in that feedback form. And that's pretty much it. I'm just trying to think if I missed out on any notifications, but I think that's great. Thank you all, and have a great evening ahead. You can feel free to explore the stage. There's the lobby area if you want to interact with anyone. So have fun doing that. And see you all tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.